school court.
Right, but what in talking with Judge, what we wanted to do was document the process to show they were noticed even through that process, and then as we go to the next level that you spoke of, we've got somewhat of a paper trail. We contacted them, these number of times, and they did or didn't come to court. Again, just to show, with people's normal concerns, to show that we are trying to work with everyone before something like that needs to take place.
So we're possibly going to send citations to people who already can't afford to fix the properties that they live in?
No, these are by and large, initially, this came up behind empty places.
But you can't differentiate.
I know, but what I'm saying is, if let's say that gentleman, he's living in a place that he's paying rent. We go after the landlord, not him. If it's a place where it's his primary residence, then again, council, you don't get to make those decisions on a case-by-case basis. Then we deal with working with him, with Red Cross and all those other things. But I think it's just horrific that right now we can do absolutely nothing. That's why we're talking.
2 points, and I really appreciate the discussion, because again, this is a problem that our community has to solve, and City Council is trying to start that process with the mayor. The issue, two things. One, if we make the decision, as Councilman Randall and I've been saying, we can't differentiate the two between someone who lives there and someone who doesn't. Are we kicking the can down the road by not making a decision with the liability of our city? Because we have an example that the mayor used 2 months ago or 3 months ago with the service station. There used to be the tire shop, auto mechanic. You pulled their permit because they changed what they were doing, but they didn't have a bathroom or some other things, and you, so how is that process that was not allowed to him to get a permit any different than what this does, which again, without us saying, okay, here's the problem, we've identified it, we have the rule, it's like we're making the rules to something, but we know like there's a good 25% of the people in our community who this is going to impact if we so choose, right? So we can say, oh, we're not going to go after them, but there's 25% of the people in this community who this is going to impact if someone says, hey, I'm the inspector, oh, your house, and we get into saying, well, now you got to come before us, we don't have the money. It's different if we say, hey, we started an emergency fund, we got these partners in. It's different when we set it up. So I think for us to pass this without, so our role is to kind of set policy. But I think if we do our community a disservice if we set this policy without the other things even starting the conversation to move it forward. But it's something that needs to happen, but I think we can't solve it tonight.
Well, let me share this in response to the situation 2 or 3 months ago that you referred to. What I found was someone had been there about 6 years, never had a permit. So yes, he got shut down because he didn't have a permit. He also did not pass Bureau Veritas public bathroom inspection. So after he left, someone else moved in without coming in for a permit. Mr. Garza, he was here. I think Mr. Martinez is the one who owns the land. So we're still talking about people who, to keep us from having these things, in following the permit process, he didn't have a bathroom that wasn't publicly standard, whatever it was that was wrong with it. So the former one didn't have one, and I refused to issue one to the new one. And they came and shared that with council, but if the place doesn't pass the inspections company that we contract with, why are we contracting with them? So when they say it didn't pass the bathroom facilities inspection, I'm not issuing a permit. Now, whatever the rules are, council passes them, but the one thing you don't have to worry about, the rules are going to be enforced. Now, what rule you put in place, that's a council decision. My job as mayor is to enforce the city's ordinances. Now, why this is in front of you is because right now, and again, keep in mind, the check and balance that you all speak of with valid reason is coming back to you. If this gentleman's situation gets cited, he's coming here. And then what resources we have or don't have, but to not do anything is not a solution at all. It's coming back to you. But right now, even with our vacant properties that's next to houses, and the horrific one, for example, on Pine Street that I drove you by, it's got 4 or 5 kids playing next to a dangerous situation. So when you speak of city culpability or liability, we knew that situation's been going on for long before I even thought to run for mayor. It's been going on at least 8 years that I know of. It's going on when you see, but what we're saying is, when are we gonna do something? I don't care what we do, but let's do something. Right now, we're in a position to do absolutely nothing, even for this gentleman that these ladies have brought before us. And I think that's a worse scenario. But remember, it's coming back to you, case by case. You make these decisions.
Attorney Prairie, is there an ordinance or a way to create an ordinance that separates abandoned substandard housing and inhabited substandard housing? Because the issue isn't the substandard housing. The issue is if somebody's living in this house and he's been living here for 30 years, and then all of a sudden we come in here and you tell him he can't live in his house. He doesn't, the difference between the gentleman that they refer to is he doesn't own that house. So we have somebody we can hold accountable to who probably can afford to fix it. But if he was the owner of that place that he was living in and he had been in there, then it creates a whole other issue, which we all agree that is completely deplorable and that's an issue. But we want to be able to fix the issue without, because they clearly stated he had nowhere else to go. So we put him out without having resources or some kind of solution for him to find somewhere else to go. That's what the issue is. The issue isn't the ordinance at all. The issue is differentiating whether somebody's living in there.
And let me address
or
that
somebody's
if
not.
I can.
Yeah, I was going to ask, can we have 2 separate ordinances? One for one that's being occupied by someone and one that's just not being occupied? Because I know if you have people living, like this gentleman is living, CPS, APS is going to move him anyway. So then you're going to be stuck with a building that this person is going to be able to move somebody else into. So you could get into that as well. But you could also get into having a whole lot of vacant buildings if these people are considered elderly or disabled or whatever, and then you're going to end up with a bunch of empty houses. So we can't have 2
Here's the problem.
ordinances to address 2 different
Let's talk about this. So you've got the vacant house that no one's lived in for, everyone knows the ones we're talking about, right?
Right.
They're truly like no roof at all, right? You know those.
Right.
Okay. Then you've got one that someone's inhabiting, right? And let's say they have no water, no way to cook, no heat, no plumbing, okay? That's a health hazard, not just to them, but to people around them, okay? So as a city, I understand your position. I'm dealing with this right now where this is an owner-occupied house. He's been there for a very, very long time. He has no sewage running in his house, okay? I don't know how he's using the restroom, but it is a public health concern for him and everyone around him. So you cannot really differentiate between that. Now, when they come to you, if that's the situation, and he came to us and he said, look, I'm trying to work with these organizations. That is the owner's responsibility, not the city to have fun. I mean, you may have to, there is a provision that says if you vacate, you may be responsible for that, okay? If you to pay for that, okay, under a vacation order if someone's habiting the house. And the city of Austin, by the way, had to do that. They vacated an apartment complex and had to pay to move those residents to somewhere else and to stay somewhere else. So that is a liability the city may have if someone's occupying the structure.
Attorney Kerwin, can you, on that same note, we know that when you go into a home, you gotta have water and you gotta have soup, you gotta have that. But give us that same example for someone who you could see the bottom from the floor, or they have holes in their roof so they catch the water with their bucket. Those aren't necessarily public health, but those are substandard structures. Mold that are maybe having, because it's been wet. How do we address that? Because those aren't,
That's the same situation I'm dealing with
the city doesn't
right.
require us so they have the water, they may have whatever, what we require them to have,
Right.
But when we get into, we don't, go looking for mold, and we don't go looking for like roofs. So how does that apply, and how, so is this
That
just
might be
only,
one
because
that
the
might-
mayor is saying only if, if the, ordinance person or whoever's gonna be checking, and so we have what we went off all the substandard houses that weren't occupied.
Okay.
But then we have a list of the same people who could be considered on the substandard where people live at, but they have water and sewer.
They may be able to repair those structures, so they might not be a demolition order. So the one that I'm dealing with now, he's got a huge hole in his floor,
Uh-huh.
okay? Where and apparently there's a lot of vermin coming in.
Let me interrupt you really quick. How do they know that the hole is in the floor? Like,
Because
what-
he had
They
no,
can go in and.
What
He had-
grounds do?
he had no water.
Okay, so think about, outside of him not having water, if he has water, has electricity, has all of those necessities, how would a city know that I have a hole in my roof or I have a hole in my floor? What grounds would I have to go in? Because we're not talking about a rental property. I understand the
Right.
rental property aspect, but if
You
I'm
may
a
not
property
know.
owner-
You can tell by the roof,
Right, so-
usually, but you wouldn't know if someone had a hole in their floor,
So
typically.
what grounds would give the city the right to go into somebody's home and inspect it if they own it? So how would we?
You'd have to have some probable cause to know, like, if you see the roof has a hole in it, you can see that from the public right-of-way, okay? Like, water's coming in, it's a hole in the roof, like, and there's no tarp, and every time it rains, it is wet, okay? You can see that, okay? That would be one where I would say, I've had that. You go in, you get a warrant. The other one, if they have a hole in the floor and we don't know about it, then you don't know about it. You can't do anything about it. I mean, you're not going to be policing every single home in the city.
You're right.
But, yeah, that's not.
And you don't have the right to either.
So if I'm an ordinance officer, and I'm not saying that this is gonna happen, but if I just dislike somebody, I'm gonna say, hey, I feel like you have substandard structure, this ordinance gives me the right to go and inspect your house.
No, it does not.
No, it doesn't.
You cannot go into someone's private property
No. And-
unless you have permission,
Mhm.
an exigent circumstance like a fire, or you get a warrant. Those are the ways you go onto people's property. I can't go into your house, if I think you have a substandard structure house, that officer, the police officer, can't go into his, can't go, and neither can the code officer. It's not,
And keep in mind, the code enforcement can only take pictures to verify the violation from the street or the curb. So, as you say, whatever's in the house, we don't, and don't want to know. That's people's privacy. But when we start talking about vacant homes that are falling apart, we can't even touch those. Or if someone brought something to us, and let's say that happened to be his primary residence, we still can't help him. But at least we can get with, like that other city did, and try to say, well, we've got to, let's see what we can do to bring it up to par. Right now, we can't even have a conversation. Even with these slumlords who live somewhere else, we can't do anything. Or the vacant property that's there, short of going through district court, spending a lot of attorney's fees, like happened with, at least one of the previous situations. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And again, I agree with all of you. We do want to manage concerns, but keep in mind, each individual case is coming back to you. You'll never have everything you need in a document, but you've got your good sense and what's right and wrong and what we can do when it's in front of you or the municipal court judge, because like you said, a person lives there, that's their property, things like that. This is not gonna make somebody's house get shut down or taken or anything like that. It doesn't. It's just opening up an ordinance violation that we really don't have on the books now. That's all it is. But remember, all these individual things, which are great examples, they're coming back for you to make those good, right, conscious decisions. That's not the ordinance or code enforcement officer's decision. What this does is it allows them to bring something that's been brought to their attention. They got to have documentation, and the documentation can't be taken, as you said, it can't go on the street. can't go onto their property, so whatever pictures they have, or whatever holes they have in the house, I mean, if I got holes in my floor, you wouldn't know, because they don't show from the street. So I can't get a citation to come in front of you. That's kind of a check and balance.
And the ones I've done have been like, one was a house that was burned down, like, but not completely. So it was like 90% burned. Well, the city had to declare it substandard and tear it down. So, because the owners had gone, you know, so that would be an easy situation for the council to be like, this is a no-brainer. Like, this house is burned to the, you know, it's,
Right. Right.
it's dangerous.
And see, those are the examples that, you know, nobody's debating. It's that the slippery slope, and these are questions, you know, that may not be our questions, but they're gonna be questions that somebody in this community is gonna wanna ask. And so, I mean, we may think this is, you know, an open and shut discussion, but at the same time, you know, this is gonna affect people, and we have to make sure we at least have the answers when they ask.
Sure.
I'm dealing with, like I said, I'm dealing with this exact situation that you're talking
Now,
about.
in that situation, as it was brought to council's attention based on an ordinance, then they decided how they could help the person or persons and things like that, bring
It's
in
his
services.
response, he went out and got Habitat and Catholic Charities. And
Okay.
he came to us and said, look, they're gonna help us, so we keep giving him more time.
Right,
We have a
Working with
demolition
him.
order, we're working with him.
sure.
We have a demolition order, we're like, okay, great, when's this gonna happen? What are they gonna do? How is this gonna play out? We're getting information from him, because the last resort is to tear down his house.
Absolutely. But again, it's coming in front of the council. And like you said,
Every
the
month.
council's working with him and seeing what resources they or he has, things of that nature. And that's exactly what's gonna happen, as I understand, in this situation, right? The worst case, after a citation, it comes before council before anything major happens to somebody's property.
And again, a citation is policy, you don't have to do that.
I know, but we
But
like
you
to
can.
show, we're trying to work with the folks.
Right.
Again, a part of these concerns is we want to show, again, especially with these empty properties, we need to reach somebody that is not here. So we do that with certified mail and tell them they need to explain the situation and what they're going to do with it, just like that. And as people need more time, they're given more time. But as Councilman Rowland said, we have a lot of these situations and we haven't been doing anything. What are we going to do now?
My question was for section 6.205 under procedures. Number 7, is that what we're talking about, that we clearly identified that, that the public hearing will be, they're coming to city council, whether to be declared? In the examples you have with the current cities, where are the people at in this process? Are they displaced at this moment? Is this, you know, is this where is the process being do we have people scrambling talking about the city's gonna kick me out? Or is that they going through this process, they come to city council, I mean, they're going through the process trying to remedy the situation, and then it comes, if they can't, whether the mayor or the ordinance people or whoever says, hey, how they got to their plan when we're talking about the 30 days, like where is that process before it comes to council? Like are we getting them when they're saying like we're gonna be out the house tomorrow, or are we getting them at the beginning of the process and we can actually say, and the mayor says, hey council, you know, we sat with them, we have a 45-day plan, and I just need you to approve this. Like where is this at? Because it doesn't clearly state that in number 7.
So, I'm not sure I understand your question because I've explained the process, so let me just make sure I explain it one more time.
Okay.
So, you got an inspection, you've got a report, then it would come to council to determine what to do with the property, okay? So at that point, usually it's a 30-day order. You can go over 30 days, you can go to 60 days, you can go 90 days. If you go over 90, they have to submit detailed plans to you, so that you know what's gonna happen when, okay? So does that help answer the first part of your question a little bit?
It gave the time frame.
Yes. So there's certain time frames here, and most of the ones I've done in the last 12, everyone except for this one, it's been a vacant property. No one's been there. It's either abandoned, it was on fire, it was the people just walked away. I've only had one property. This is the only property I've ever had in 12 years where the person is still remaining in the property. And that's not going to last much longer because it is a health hazard. So
Can we add something like a bullet or something to identify people who are inhabiting a substance in this thing, just a little one-liner?
you will see everything that happens. This council, the building official doesn't get to decide what happens. I don't get to decide. The mayor doesn't get to decide. The police chief doesn't get to decide. And the judge doesn't get to decide. This council decides what happens to any property that comes before you. And every substandard will have to come before you. And every case is different. And so you have the power. I don't have it. The mayor doesn't have it. Mayor Pro Tem doesn't have it. Y'all have it as a body. Yes.
Right now, we supposedly have a place that's being rented out, and they went to the owner and told the owner that the entire place is unlivable, and even for her. And she has refused to move, and she continues to rent these rooms out. She refuses to leave. What is our liability in that case? If we
You don't have a lot of liability because you're a city, but, you do have a responsibility to, one, treat all properties the same, okay? So, you're not treating somebody that is poor different than somebody who's rich, or somebody who's white different from somebody who's black. You treat everyone the same, okay? So it's occupied or not occupied, or owner occupied or not, or renter or not.
there's owner occupied, plus she
Okay.
rents out the other
And she
rooms.
rents out the other place,
Yes.
okay? And it's not a habitable because of plumbing, electricity, water, sewer, all these, everything,
And
lots of stuff.
falling.
Okay, fallen in? Okay, so that would be a situation that, if y'all can get on the property, great. If not, you need a warrant and you get on the property, and then it would come to you and you would decide, based on that report, based on the photographs, based on what the violations are, what the code issues are, what to do with that property. Some of these properties can't even be repaired, you could spend $1 million and you can't repair this property, it's that heavily destroyed. Some you can. I did one where it was a house in a really nice neighborhood. It had a couple of broken windows. People were coming in, kids were going in there and doing drugs. We were able to declare it substandard, but we ordered it to be boarded up. And I think the city had to go actually do that.
Well, the entire place is awful. The yard is full of cars. There's animals. If this house was to ever catch on fire, I don't know how anybody would make it out. Not even the people that live upstairs that she rent out these rooms to.
And that's sad. And it's a reality, and it's a hard situation for this city. It's a situation every one of my cities faces. Some might have more than others, but they all face, every council faces what you're asking right now. But again, like the mayor said, it's on an individual, every case is different. And I'm just trying to give you some examples of what I've seen and what I've done in other cities, just to try to help you. But this is not new to y'all.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, how does council wish to dispose of this?
We had a motion, correct? Do we have a second to that motion?
Yes.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, have the same right? Please let the record show it's unanimous. Make sure I'm on the right agenda.
We're on,
11?
we're on to 11.
11. Item 11, discuss, consider, and take action to adopt an ordinance regarding rental registration. The very example that the lady shared with us is the type of thing that I found out other cities have done, and that's where this comes before you, where someone is renting, and we find out about that. Again, it's still in ours to come in front of the council, am I right, Councilor?
Do what the,
If we've got someone in, like, an untenable situation, it still comes before
Yes.
council. Okay, so this one has to do more with a couple of things. This would allow the city, as other cities have shared with me, to even know who's renting. We have a lot of people renting houses or sheds that we don't know about, which is not the issue, but for them to have folks in these deplorable conditions, again, that's a responsibility we have. This would, there's no rental fee. Council can decide that later if you think this is a good idea, and it could be extremely minimal. But when we run into these situations, we would be able to follow up on complaints like what these ladies shared with us, and be able to do something to help whoever's living in those horrendous conditions, especially since someone owns the property and is charging rent and really just not putting anything back into it.
So, what would be this process as far as like dealing with people who already rent property, who already own rental property in the city? What is the process of making them register their property as rental property?
Well, this would be literally, Council, and correct me if I'm wrong, this wouldn't be any different, say, than an ordinance on, you have these trash containers, you've been having them picked up for years. Now we're saying after a couple of days you need to pull them back.
Right.
They just have to over time comply. It's not a grandfather, if that's what you ask, but they would still be registering like anyone else.
I'm not even asking about grandfather. I'm asking like how are we going to identify, even just identify, because nobody, the property they're referring to, nobody even knew that it existed. So how do we? Because I know if I'm renting property and I know it's a dump, if there's nothing that's going to make me go and tell you that my property is a dump, I'm not going to do it. So it still gives us the same property. If there's nothing that requires people to say, hey, you're renting in the city, you have to fill out, whatever paperwork.
Well, it's like any law that passes, like even with the trash can thing. I think council passed that a year and a half ago, 18 months, at least 15 months. It's never been enforced. It's been put out there. We're educating people on it. And a lot of people have brought it in just because it's now a city ordinance. A lot of people will do the right thing. But remember, it's really for the situations like that, those worst case scenarios. And as we find out about folks, we say, hey, you need to register with the $25, whatever fee it is. But again, it's those massive violators who have situations like that right now we can't do a thing. So that's, again, the discussion is to try to do something for those that concern us. Yes, sir.
We have and again, I don't know, we can't resolve the issue, but we know in this community we have a housing shortage. We have more people here than we have available spaces for people to live, which then creates a market for people who have substandard housing who need to be getting paid for years. I think this rental registration will drive it deeper underground and not bubble up what we're trying to do. I think it's a step in the right direction. My concern with the ordinance is the differentiating between someone who owns an apartment, which is rental, versus someone who owns, I own a home. What is the difference between making me register my home that I rent out bedrooms versus I own an apartment complex? And so, those two things as far as how, is this just, we're saying, because it says we list single family dwellings, duplexes, townhomes, and those condos, but what is...
Look at section 4.1108, that deals with the multifamily. What they have to do to have the exemption.
Now, the multifamily residential structure, depending on the number of people who live there, who are not family to the listed property owner with the tax appraisal district, according to our own ordinances, that's a violation.
Right.
Say that again?
We have ordinances on the books that if right now, they're old, but that's what is there. There are ordinances on the books that say if you have a home and you're renting it to an inordinate amount of people, let's say 5 folks, and the home is registered in Randall as the owner, and none of these are family members, that's an ordinance violation right now. We just haven't been enforcing it. It's been on the books for years. And like you said, most people didn't even know. This is just to clean up, like many of our other ordinances, some of the situations that are going on. What we have on the books is old, outdated, doesn't accommodate the current situation. But, and let me say this, one of the things that came from some of these other cities is, like any other ordinance, the majority of people tend to comply with the law, even if it's over time. And what, again, this does is when a situation like that comes up, it's not registered, that's an ordinance violation, right by itself, because the guy didn't register it. So now we find out the registration ordinance kicks in, just like if he doesn't have water there, it's in violation. So it's little things like that, but it's just to bring us in line with the situation we find ourselves in. Because so many of the people in the city who used to own property are no longer with us, and the folks who inherited it by and large live somewhere else. And we're stuck with their deadbeat.
I think that, you know, I think the ordinance registering your property is a good thing, especially when you talk about dealing with, you know, substandard. But I think we could make this, you know, a positive incentive-based thing for people who rent property and do the right thing. When we talk about creating a registration, I think you need to figure out how to make a virtual registration that says if I rent property, you know, I'm a property, you know, I rent property in the city of Prairie because, as Councilman Rowland stated, there's a shortage of rental property and people are always looking for housing. And so now we have a database where if I want to come into Prairie and rent property, I can go to the Prairie website and click on this database that tells me all of the vacancies or places where they're available to rent. I think when you look at, you know, property owners, I feel like that's an incentive that says, hey, you know, whenever your dwelling becomes vacant, you can notify us and we'll put it on this, and we'll put it out on this listing because, you know, when people are moving here all the time, especially students, they're looking for rental property. They, you know, I get calls frequently about, hey, do you know anybody or anywhere where I can rent property? I think taking that information and saying, hey, go to the website, click on this link, and it'll give you all of the places that are available for rent. And, you know, it provides an incentive for the property owners, and then it'll give us the ability to start cracking down on those properties that are substandard. Because at the end of the day, substandard living doesn't equate to housing. So whether it's a shortage or not, you know, nobody wants to live in those conditions, and nobody wants their family to live in